Mike was always searching for the real truth.
He was straight, he was honest.
Incredibly funny, engaging.
Michael Hammer was the greatest thought leader that I've ever encountered in my life.
He was a salesman, he was a showman.
Michael was enormously generous with his time and his insights.
There's never been anyone like him, and I doubt there ever will be.
Reengineering the corporation is still the standard for how to take something that's in trouble and turn it around.
You know, we worked for years on that book, and we'd get a printed copy of the manuscript back, and within weeks, the pages would be filled with Michael's notes of changes. And Michael was such a perfectionist that our first publisher never believed we'd ever finish the book, and they canceled the deal on us.
It's been almost 20 years, and I still use that book day in and day out.
For any one element of his model, he could just give you a story and a story and a story and a story that brought it to life.
Automating a mess creates an automated mess.
His goal wasn't just to win intellectual converts, but to win emotional converts behind the importance of his idea and the importance of acting on what he taught them.
Bar none, he stands as the best stand-up large room presenter I've ever experienced in my life. The first time I actually saw him at the Hammer Forum where I was going to follow him, I just kept thinking, oh shit, what do I do now, okay? How can I possibly follow someone like this?
You're really going to transform the enterprise? That's not okay.
At a certain level, his lecture style was frenetic. He was dancing around the room, running around the room.
This is revolutionary talk transformation.
And even though I had heard some of the lectures multiple times, and I knew his jokes before he would say them in some cases, I was energized by his interaction with the class, the way he would connect with students, and I would be able to build off that in other classes.
Nobody had ever heard about them.
He talked about a company called Progressive Insurance
that specialized in high-risk drivers. I'm not going to insult you and assume that's why you know them.
And he would say, when people have car accidents, they can't drive to work, so they stay home and watch daytime television. And who advertises on daytime televisions? Attorneys who tell you to sue your insurance company because you don't have a car.
They can sue. That's correct. Very good.
So he said, I know you don't have time to watch daytime television, so I've watched it for you.
There's a man with the soul of an accountant. Delayed payment. Good for you. Exactly.
He was hysterical. He had great ideas. He had great techniques. He was genuinely incredibly helpful, and he was just a really fun guy to have around.
He liked to quote people. Oscar Wilde, Groucho Marx.
I remember jokes. Like, didn't he really practice and bring jokes into the talks?
The thing I always remember are the Yogi Berra, the Dorothy Parker, those things.
There was just this constant interaction with Michael, just because of him being so curious, and he was trying to, to break the current paradigms, to move process thinking to the next level and beyond.
I'm following in the footsteps of my hero and role model, Monty Python, and now for something completely different, because that's the idea.
He will depict a concept, but he'll use the Monty Python castles and the catapults.
I think he was very much a teacher. I mean, the moment you started talking about something, he'd grab a whiteboard and, in the conference room, start, drawing little circles and squares and linking it all up.
Perhaps not many people know about his prior life as a professor.
I was Michael's graduate student, 1976 to 1983, and changed my life.
He taught me not just database management, which is what I work on still, but he taught me how to write clearly.
Mike would take the things I gave him and he would turn the pages red with comments.
The many people who have studied under him and what they've done is a major part of his legacy.
He used to come into my office that I shared with my office mate Jay Cunin every afternoon around 5, and he would say, "Would you gents care to engage in a little stochastic seminar?" And he'd have a pack of cards in his pocket, and we'd go into his office and play hearts for an hour.
It was clear even then that he was really a remarkably and unusually capable graduate student. He was promoted to a rank of instructor, and they recognized his great abilities and gave him tenure.
And I've often asked myself, why would somebody get tenure at MIT and immediately quit? And I think for Michael, it was about achieving things. And he achieved that. So there was nothing left to do, so he had to find some other line of work.
He wanted to write mysteries.
Well, see, you knew much more about him personally. We just never talked about that kind of thing. We talked about, automata.
I learned very early on you never wanted to play movie trivia with Michael.
You wouldn't have a lot of chance.
If you weren't listening, you missed the jokes, so you had to really pay tight attention.
Michael's mind would go so quickly that oftentimes it would take the audience a while to catch up, and he would literally stop and say, "I'll wait."
When he was most serious, when he really wanted to communicate something which is important, he sort of injected it with humor. And that made it more palatable for people to hear, but there was a great truth being said at the time.
Michael changed the conversation in the halls of corporations around the world. Before Michael, it was about functions, it was about discrete components of your business. After Michael, it was about the connectedness of your business. It was about processes. It was about how the businesses work together.
Michael had a great sense that work was more than just work. He had a great sense that work was a significant calling, and that the value of people and the importance of people and the work they do and helping them to see their work as valuable work was something that was all of our responsibilities.
His belief was it was much more ennobling for a person to be involved in end-to-end work because people could identify with their work. They could feel that there was a final product they were achieving, and that there was a customer that they were achieving that or serving as a result of that achievement.
Michael was, without question, the principal proponent of these ideas.
The notion that processes get designed and consequently redesigned, and that those designs and redesigns are linked to outcomes, he owns it. Okay? So he owns it.
Michael was fundamental of our process journey. I think that's clear. Without him, we would not be there where we are today.
He inspired us, he motivated us, and he let us see that it was possible to conquer some of the big challenges that we were looking to conquer.
Other consulting firms saw process reengineering as just a gold mine.
Most consultants are wanting to sell, and one of their main thrusts is the profit they make from their clients. Michael had very little interest in that aspect. His interest lied primarily in the teaching, the understanding of the concepts, making sure that value and benefits were actually going to be created.
The model that he had for Hammer & Company is a unique model for a company. In a consulting world that is really driven by profits, Michael's approach was all about educating and not at all about profits.
He was a diplomat in every sense of the way, where if you look at the meaning, that a diplomat can tell you how to go to hell and you actually enjoy the journey.
And you just generally don't get that level of honesty from anyone, right? Even a spouse in most relationships. And then you read to the end and think about what he said in that. It's just brilliantly on point, absolutely directly on point, and as a result, it causes you to say, wow, I can do better.
Another thing that people may not know about Michael is that he was a DJ, and so he would always find a line in a song or a title to a song to work into his conferences, Buffalo Springfield being one of them.
Something happening here. What it is.
I've had a great career. I've been very fortunate. I love what I do, and I always have. And if I think about the people who have either caused that, contributed to it, or enabled it, and I start thinking about my parents and my wife and things like that, Michael winds up on that list. There's no doubt about that.
He was a great individual, a great friend, a great colleague, a great coach, a great listener, and a great visionary.
He once had to videotape a lecture because he was traveling.
He didn't like talking to a room with no audience.
And what he did was he brought a few of his daughter's dolls.
Sesame Street characters. and he set them up on in the front row of a big lecture hall.
And lectured to them, so you had an audience.
Oscar the Grouch.
He also came in one day to work wearing a big bird costume. He had rented it for his daughter's birthday party. Unfortunately, his daughter got scared, so he couldn't use it there. But he paid for the rental, and he wanted to get his money's worth.
And he said, you know, Sesame Street characters are popping up, and there's a mallet, and you hit them on the head. And he said, you know, I used to think that was all about hand-eye coordination. And now as I've learned and studied, what I've found is that that's truly an early executive development tool, as you're learning how to say, no, no.
I don't think many people understand that he did a lot of fundamental groundbreaking work in the database research world, which eventually led to his work in office automation, which eventually led to his role in the management consulting world.
He had a unique ability to weave biblical stories into the process of implementation in ways that actually were incredibly powerful.
I think of him more as just being so sensible. Like you could always just go to him for advice, and he'd have a pragmatic, useful answer.
He had such a commitment to his family. I always saw that as part of the perfection with which he lived his life.
He would challenge you in your thought, but he would also challenge you in your action. And that is something that we hope to preserve.